How is everyone doing? It is September 15th of 2021 and we're really excited to show you this tomato. This is the from the Dwarf Tomato Project. It is the Dwarf Peppermint Stripes tomato. Looking in the camera here, it is coming in a lot more coloration than I'm seeing it with my eyes normally. If I was to say anything about this tomato, I would say it is last year when we tried it for the first time growing it. It was the closest to a Berkeley tie-dye that I had seen. A Berkeley tie-dye is a larger style tomato that is a really cool color. Mostly, even though you're seeing a lot of coloration come up out on this one, we're going to take this one in and give it a try, but usually there's a lot of green. We made the same mistake this year that we made last year, and when they were green, being that they're a green type, it's really hard to tell when they're ripe. So we realized that these ones had been ripe, have been here for a while, so it might be even a little bit overdone. The Dwarf Tomato Project is plants. I looked up the history of it. There's not really much history on it. The seeds were introduced in 2018, so it is a established variety though. So when you buy seeds, you'll get exactly the kind you want. This one is actually grown from seeds that we saved from our own tomatoes last year, and it looks as true to type as can be. So it's the Dwarf Peppermint Stripes. Let me get it off here real quick. This one right here is an ugly one. We won't save seeds from that one. We'll take it in to take a look at it. Really just weird shaped oblong style tomatoes on most of it. This one right here turned out pretty well though. It's starting to split a little bit, but that one's a pretty rounded one. But the Berkeley tie-dye can be one that can kind of cat face on the bottom like that a little bit. Gets these weird shapes, maybe gets a tiny bit of splitting, but it's not too bad. This one feels really soft. But we'll be saving seeds on these couple right here, and probably just eating this one right here. So it is the Dwarf Peppermint Stripes is what it's called. It comes from a place called the Dwarf Tomato Project, where they have been for the past maybe 15-20 years. They've been crossing heirlooms with dwarf plants, or finding genetic variations that create a smaller plant. Even though they're dwarf tomato plants, they still get 3 to 5 foot tall. We've seen them get as tall as 6 to 8 feet, but it's more of a hybrid style plant for people that don't have people that have very little space is what I'd like to say. So if you don't have a lot of space, this right here is the plant.
I'm all looking at it.
Look how strong the plant is all the way down. We had to top it a little bit. It's been stripped of most of it. All these plants right here come from the Dwarf Tomato Project. And see this small little hedge right here? We've probably pulled 50 tomatoes from these 3 individual plants right here. The Lemon Ice, the Mr. Snow, and now the Peppermint Stripes. So it's called the Dwarf Peppermint Stripes. It doesn't say where it came from. I would like to believe that there's definitely probably some Berkeley tie-dye in here, and since it's a little bit pink, maybe a dwarf pink variety is how they crossed it. They just say it comes from a beauty family or something, but I'm not sure exactly how it was created. But we like these dwarf tomato plants. They're really good for people growing in small spaces. It is September 15th of 2021, and we'll take these in and give them a look. Alright, the Dwarf Peppermint Stripe Tomato. I consider this a green tomato. A lot of times they don't get too much dark. This might mean a little bit too ripening. If anybody grows this one, or even the Berkeley tie-dye, what you'll notice is as soon as it starts to get the coloration or the blush at the very bottom, it'll quickly escalate, and if it escalates to the point where it's too much of it going on, this is actually supposed to be pink. It's a tomato that's considered striped with light green and dark green, and then it starts to get a pink blush, and that can really get a darkened color really fast. Last year when we tried it, it almost had dual flavors, and the inside of it last year, we'll see this year, but last year was pink and green. And even though it's a green tomato, it's really hard to explain growing green tomatoes. It can be hard to know when they're ripe, but when they are ripe, they are true green. I would say, for example, an apple. If you had a red sweet apple that was underdone and still green, and if you had a green apple that was underdone and still green, those are both kind of like a green flavor that's kind of gross. So you would want to fry that up like fried green tomatoes if it was underdone. The green flavor is like similar to the apple. Once the tomato gets red, or once the tomato becomes fully ripened, the green on it isn't the same as it being underdone. It's a different kind of green flavor. I know I talk a lot about the smoky flavor in green tomatoes a lot. This is almost a difference to the example, because the green doesn't contain the smoky flavor even though it's still green, if that makes any sort of sense. So when we had this one last year, it had some pucker to it, but it almost had dueling flavors in it based on the pink and green. So we'll see how much variation is in these.
I'll go ahead and cut into this one. So yeah, it's green, which is a little bit of pink blush.
That looks dang near perfect, huh?
Yeah, it looks really good.
It might be a little bit over the meat in it. Seems a tiny bit mealy, but there's a lot of meat for a good slicing tomato.
Tastes really good. It has a lot of flavor. It is like on the acidic side a little more, like a pucker flavor. Really good tasting. So it's acidic, it's got a lot of flavor. It's really good tasting. Definitely tastes like a tomato. It's hard to compare it with something. I would say like if you pop a cherry tomato in your mouth and eat it and you get that burst of flavor and acid. That's what it reminds me of.
That one might be under, but you can usually tell when they're done, they're supposed to have a little bit of pink in here. So this one looks about perfect. This one looks maybe even a little under. Yeah, and that looks the same too. So if you eat green tomatoes that are underdone, you probably give yourself the poops. So I wouldn't advise. That's why people fry green tomatoes. You can also pickle green tomatoes. That'll help get some of that out of there. But if you eat too much green tomatoes, you're going to give yourself an upset stomach and not feel good and stuff like that. But to have them like this is really, really good. So you want to make sure that they're done. This one right here, I can't quite tell. Eating a tiny bit of it won't hurt me, I'm sure.
Thing is,
I
this
don't know.
tomato is supposed to be green, so it's good to eat fresh because it's meant to be green.
Let me compare it to this one too. The meat in it's really good. If you wanted a slicer tomato, the smaller one is actually, this is the smaller tomato here is a rarer one on this one. They're usually larger shapes. It's really cool growing these dwarf tomatoes. I got myself a piece of this split or cat facing too. It does have a really pucker that comes in at the very, very end. It's got a strong flavor. That's what I would say about it. The green in it is a really, really strong flavor. If you've had cherry tomatoes a lot, they are like little pucker power juice packets, and when you eat them, they really catch you. This catches you at first. It just seems really, really mellow, but then it just comes in.
It's a good tomato. I like it.
Yeah, the huge variation is the pucker on the one that might be a little bit under. Hit me quick. The one that might be a little bit over took a second, and then it hit. We've had the Berkeley tie-dye. We've had this one before. They both taste really, really similar. The core here is usually the mild part. The juicy part out here is usually the one that's got the pucker bite to it. But this is a beautiful slicer. You can slice yourself off some good tomatoes, or some good tomato sandwiches with it would be really, really good, because with the bread, with the mayonnaise, I wouldn't say it would sometimes we like to just cut up a tomato and just eat it like that. So just raw plain tomato like we would with this right here. After we're done seeding them, we usually take the leftover husk of the tomato and feed on it like tomato vampires. But this is an excellent tomato. Any one of the ones that we've grown so far, if we ever bring up the Dwarf Tomato Project, have been power plants. These are determinate, usually 3 to 6 foot tall, strong plants that produce a ton, and their genetics are almost always coming from heirlooms. So people are just, the Dwarf Tomato Project's just hybridizing heirlooms and genetic variations and some of the dwarf varieties into the mix, and creating plants that people can grow on their balconies and that will produce a really strong plant that will give you a ton of tomatoes. The Berkeley tie-dye, if you don't have room to grow that giant indeterminate tomato type, this one right here is almost exactly like it. There's the Dwarf Mr. Snow, which is a lot like the Hawaiian pineapple tomato. The Purple Heart is one that we related to the Cherokee Purple, maybe not for exact flavor, but more because of the consistency of the meat and slicing it. So all these different varieties almost have a foot in the door with their heirloom parents, in a sense. So I know some people don't want to grow ones that are non-heirloom. They don't want determinants, or they don't want certain things going on when they share seeds or save seeds. But these seeds are savable. We're going to save all these ones right here. It's a really excellent plant. Hope I don't babble too long and there's some good information that comes out in this. But yeah, an excellent tomato. I really like the green flavor, like a green apple compared to a red apple. If you were to say a red tomato compared to a green tomato, there's almost like a little bit of a green sour to a green apple.
Yeah.
That you can almost taste in a green tomato.
Yeah, it's a really good tomato, and I recommend giving it a try if you haven't. You might like it.
So we love you guys. The Dwarf Peppermint Stripes, and I'll take you outside for a quick moment. So these ones are a little closer to ripe than I thought, but they're still not ready. We gave several away. A neighbor has a plant. I think she only has one, but it's been producing tons and tons for her. We made the same mistake last year, not quite knowing when they were ripe. As soon as you see a tiny bit of pink blush underneath, that's about when they're ripe. Our neighbor was telling us that if it gets too much, that it can become mealy or not as good as a slicer, and I can see that too. Ours was just a tiny bit mealy on the one that was severely ripened as in comparison. So you see a little bit of pink blush, they're good to go. It's the Dwarf Peppermint Stripes. We got it, I think these are 7-gallon pots that we bought. These work really good. A lot of other types of plastic will degrade over time. These ones seem to be the same every year. You can get a really bad piece on the bottom though, so if you're buying one of these 7 gallons, they run about $8 to $10 sometimes, or you can find them on sale or clearances for $5 or $6. But if you're getting them, make sure this bottom piece don't fall off easy. That way you can move it around and stuff. This is one of the ones that falls off easy that we got, and this one's one that doesn't. They look exactly the same almost, but just maybe check your pots or your containers when you're buying them and stuff like that. Make sure you can move them around. One of the biggest strengths of growing in containers is that we can continue to shift things all the way up until the last moment. This one got caught up out here a little bit. Not as productive as it could be. None of our plants are this year, but we are getting a lot. We're doing better this year than we ever have, and really excited to see this one in the yard. It has an excellent flavor. If you really like a strong tomato flavor with a pretty good little bite on it for pucker power, this would be it. The more you let them ripen, the more mealy their insides will get a little bit. If you wanted to use it for a slicer though, get it right when it's ready, slice it, and it would be excellent on a sandwich, a tomato sandwich like that. So the Dwarf Peppermint Stripes, September 15th of 2021. If we would have known that this one was ready earlier, we would have a lot more tomatoes on it as well. But we've given several away. Sometimes our grows will just get us a few to try out and save seeds from. I'd like to have had a lot more of this one, but that's our fault. That's not the plant. So anybody that's interested in growing a strong, sturdy plant, maybe wanting to grow the Berkeley tie-dye, and this is the closest thing you could probably get to it. So really excellent tomato. We love you guys, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Did I really tell people not to eat green tomatoes or they get the boobs? We are definitely not professionals. That's pretty cool looking though. We should insert a sick guitar solo right here, huh? Wheelie wah, wheelie wheelie wah. Too much fun.